Hey everyone, it's Chammies, and today I'm going to be giving you tips on how to make friends while you're working remotely. So you can use these tips whether you just started out on a new job and you're not really sure how to make friends starting out remotely, or maybe you've been at a job for a while and you really want to make some new friends. Then you can use any of these tips to help you out. So the first tip is to write welcome messages on Slack or whichever communication forum your company uses. I'm going to be saying Slack because my company uses Slack. So basically what I would say is if you just started a new job, you've probably come into contact with a couple people, maybe HR, you probably got introduced to people on your team. So I would within the first week or two, send out a Slack message to these people. Just pick a couple of them, however many you feel comfortable reaching out to at the time. The message can be super simple. It can be something like, hey, my name is Chammies, I'm a strategist here, and I'm really excited to start working with you. And then they'll probably respond, hey, welcome. And then after that, I think it's important to ask a question. My go-to question is, what things do you like to do for fun? Because it's a question that kind of leaves the door pretty open so they can say the things they like, and then also gives you some information for the future, like, okay, they like these things, so maybe I can bring these up later. And then also it's just a good question to get to know someone, and then you can also answer your responses back, and it's pretty easy question, softball question to answer, and pretty safe topic to talk about. So that's the question that I usually go for. And then once that happens, you can ask follow-up questions on Slack and make that conversation go as long as you want, and eventually you might just like something and let it sit, but at least you've done the first step, which is introducing yourself and getting to know a little bit more information about that person outside of work. And then on the flip side of that, say you've been at a company for a while, same thing. This is what I do now. I've been at my company for 2 years. So every time someone new at my work joins, I message, hey, it's Chammies and I'm a strategist here and I'm really excited to be working with you. And then I follow up with, what do you like to do for fun? And then they usually answer, and then that way I can have things to talk about with them so I can get to know them better and also just welcome them, because obviously it's really hard starting a new job, especially remotely, and it's really hard as you don't get to see anyone water cooler style and talk to them while you're eating lunch or something. So you have to kind of go out of your way to make these first initial connections with people, because otherwise you might just go a year or two without ever seeing them if you don't have any meetings together. So I think the welcome part is a really good place to start. So I think those first 2 weeks when you enter a job is really important, because you can say, hey, what's up, how's it going, and you just want to get to know them. But I'll say you don't have to do this as a welcome thing, because one time I realized that I hadn't really reached out to someone. I have never talked to them, but they've been at my company the whole time I was there. So then I just reached out to them and was like, hey, it's Chammies, we haven't had any conversations yet or any meetings, but I'd love to just get to know you, get to know a little about you, connect with you. And so then we chatted a little bit, and now I know more about her, which is really awesome. So another tip I have after that would be the follow-up. So generally after I have that initial Slack message back and forth with people asking what they do for fun, I'll say, oh hey, would you mind if I threw a 15-20 minute calendar on your meeting to get to know you? And you can say that whether you're just started or you have been there for a while, and then they'll usually say yes, hopefully, probably, and then you can put a meeting on their calendar, and then you can really get that face-to-face time, because it's kind of hard to get to know people just via Slack. You can get to know people, but I think it's really easy to become and feel more connected when you get that eye contact and get to see them in their environment. So I think asking for a 15-20 minute video call is not too much time. It's pretty short. I know people might be really Zoom fatigued, but this might be a little fun meeting in their Zoom call, and you can talk about whatever. I'd say when you get on the call, that's where I usually use that nugget of information of what do they like to do for fun. Then I mention a specific TV show like Avatar. I'm like, okay, I can bring that up in our little 15-minute conversation. I can get a little more background and ask them about job stuff. You could say, how long have you been here in this industry? What do you most like about this industry? Oh, that's awesome. Things like that. So you can start safe, asking about jobs, or you could go a little more social and not just specifically talk about the job. So you could say oh hey, can you tell me more about this TV show? Or maybe you could ask something oh what do you like to do on your weekends? Oh, how many dogs do you have? You could just ask questions like that, which can also spark conversations. So it's just a no pressure, just getting to know someone meeting, and it's a really good way to make that face-to-face connection with somebody. All right, so tip number 3 is, as we know, if you're working remotely, you're gonna have hella Zoom meetings and video call meetings, Teams meeting, whichever software you use. So those are a great time, especially in those beginning 5 minutes when you're waiting for people to gather and everyone in the group to gather, to ask some questions, get to know them. What usually happens for me is people will come into the meeting, and then not everyone's there yet, so that's a great time just while it's quiet to say something oh hey, what did you do this weekend? And this is very key. When somebody asks you that, you need to give them a nugget of something to go off of if you want to have conversation. So here's an example of a conversation that if you didn't really want it to go anywhere and you're just tired, is what it would play out hey, how you doing? Good, cool. And that would be the end of that. See, not much happened. You didn't give them a nugget. But what's important is to give people a nugget of information so they can respond and do a follow-up. So when someone says, hey, how was it going? You might want to say something oh, it was awesome, I learned this new recipe last weekend. And they might say, oh, what recipe was that? And you can tell them, and then they'll say, oh, that's so cool, I was cooking something too, my favorite recipe is blah blah blah. So it's giving people nuggets of information or things to choose from that they can ask more about, and invites conversation, can help you make conversation with people on these little Zoom calls. So if you think about it, let's say you had a Zoom meeting with someone 5-day, like every day that week, and you took those 5 minutes of every like Zoom meeting to get to know them, that's like, doing math, calculating, 5 times 5, that is 25 minutes of conversation with that person in a week. So it really adds up, and like I said, you'll have a lot of conversations with people. So it's really taking advantage of that time right before you start the meeting to get to know people, especially because it's a great way, because sometimes they'll be grouped, you know, with like 5 people, and so you can get to know like some other people that you might not talk to as much through that way. And it's also like low pressure, because it's not like you have to have a whole conversation with them. It's just a quick little, what's going on, cool, nice, okay, we can start the meeting. Kind of like when you're in person, you could walk into the room, there might already people there, you might say, hey, what's up, like how's it going, what's going on with work, what's going on with you, and then you just wait until everyone gathers and start the meeting. So I think that's a really great way to make conversation with people and get to know them. I'd also say, like, if they have an interesting background, definitely comment on it. Like, say like, oh hey, I love that painting you have in the background, or oh, your cat is so cute, what breed is it? Or maybe like they put on a background, you're like, oh, what TV show is that? So I'll say for me, I love to change my background a lot. I love to make it like the TV show that I'm watching at the time, so people are like, oh, I always know what TV show you're watching because I see your background. Like I have BoJack Horseman for a while, I have Parks and Rec, and I have Bob's Burger themed. So it's a really good way to make conversation, because people usually always comment like, oh, what show is that? Or I love that show, and then you can kind of explain what show it is, or you can like tell them what it is, or you could talk about the show, etc. So I think really use a background as something to help you when you're trying to make conversation, especially if like that's something that's pretty tricky for you. Another tip I have is to take it offline. So what I mean by that is, say I was talking to someone, this happened to me recently, and I said, hey, what do you like to do for fun? And she's like, oh, I love tennis, I love blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, I like tennis too, like we should play sometime. She's like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Like, you know, we still chatted, did a couple of other things, and eventually I said, hey, I'm actually going to play tennis like next week, do you want to play with me? And she said, yeah, sure. And then we went to tennis. It was really awesome. Like, of course we talked some about work, but we also talked about random other things that weren't really related to work. So in that way, we're really building that friendship. And again, it's like that face-to-face, like person time is really important, like just as important as having the time to talk when you are online. And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be sports like tennis or soccer. It could also be like, oh, like there's a school concert going on, do you want to come with me? There's a new restaurant I want to try out, do you want to try it with me? So you could really think of anything that you think would be interesting to do with this person outside of work, even like a quick coffee or something. I would just ask, because the worst that could happen is like, oh, sorry, I'm like pretty busy, maybe they don't want to go. But it can turn out really well if you're like, yeah, sure, and then maybe you might make it a thing. Another tip is to see if your company has employee resource groups. So employee resource groups are groups of employees that have a shared interest or identity. You might have like a cooking interest group, I have an Asian American resource group, you might have a book club, you might have a group that's dedicated to soccer, etc. So I would see if they have them and then join the ones you're interested in, because again, you're just being able to connect with more people across the organization, and doing an activity together is really good for building relationships. And if you don't see one you like, I would talk to your HR and see, you know, what does it take to make an employee resource group. Next tip I have is to attend work happy hours and events. I know they might seem kind of boring, you might be super tired, and especially Zoom ones are just like very different from online, because it's not like that. You can go around and mingle and talk to people and like share in this experience. You're just sitting on yet another Zoom call, and it feels like another Zoom meeting. But I would say, at least for me, I really enjoy my happy hours. Even if I didn't say anything during them, like sometimes I was just really tired, at least I could hear other people talk and get to know more about them. Maybe I might chat in the Zoom chat because I was too tired to actually come on camera and say something. But I think they're just a really great way to get to know each other, and the people that do come usually like talk and say stuff. So I think it's really important to kind of participate in those. If you are trying to make like new friends, that's a great way to do it. The next one I'd say is participate in your company's Slack channels if they have like more non-work related ones. Like for us, we have a travel channel, we have a dog channel, a recipe channel. So we even have like creative share channels. You can put creative stuff you see in there. So I think it's really a good way to kind of just connect with people by either like putting something in there like, oh hey, look at this funny thing I saw, look, here's my dog, so we get to know who your dog is, or responding to people, you know, going LOL, that's so funny, or like I love this, or some comment like that. So I think it's a really good way for people to just to kind of get to know you. They see you, they're like, oh okay, really likes dogs clearly since she's writing about it, or hey, like I connected with someone I might not have connected with because they wrote on the Slack channel. So that's a really good way to get to know each other and build connections. It's also like, I think in my mind, it seems like a lower stress way, so you don't have to like get on a call, you don't have to have a conversation, you're just like reacting kind of like how you would on social media. So in that way, it can be a really easy way to make more connections with people at your work and feel connected. And then kind of similar on that note is to, you know, send targeted memes to people that you think they think are funny. Share a specific article with a specific person you think they'd really enjoy. So like if I know someone's really into like SpongeBob, I might send them a SpongeBob related meme. I sometimes spend a lot of office memes because obviously we all work at the office, so I know they'd understand it. So sending like targeted memes to people, or even just information like, oh hey, I know you're really interested in like diversity and inclusion, here's a cool article I thought you'd be interested in. So it's really awesome to send pieces of content like that, because it's kind of like if you imagine like making friends like not at work, you basically send them funny articles and pictures and content you think they would like. So now you're just doing that on Slack like to your coworkers, and that way you're kind of building relationships and friendships with them. The next one is to ask for help. So you can totally just ask someone in your company you trust. Maybe like I would probably ask my boss. So I'd say, hey, like is there anyone in the company you think I should get to know? I'm kind of trying to make friends here and I'm not sure who I should talk to. And then they can set you up with like, oh hey, I know this person pretty well and they're friendly and I think they'd really like you, so you should hit them up. That actually happened to me a while ago. It's like one of my friends, coworkers there, who was just like, oh, have you talked to this person yet? I'm like, oh no, I haven't. And they're like, oh, you should totally just like talk to her. She's super friendly, like just chat her, like Slack her and then ask her for a video call. So I did that and I talked to her and she's so cool, like, and I'm really glad I did that. So I would have never talked to her like otherwise because she wasn't in any of my meetings and we would have like never our paths would have never crossed. So I was like, wow, that's so cool. I'm glad I did that. So now it's kind of my mission to try to like do that with like everyone at our company. So like try to talk to everyone for at least like 15 minutes just so I know like who they are, what they do, like what they're about, what they're a little bit interested in. So definitely like using people in your network already at work to connect with other people. And this is especially helpful if like say you've been there for a minute and you're like, oh, I'm not really sure, like who should I like reach out to? You can talk to someone who's been there for a little longer or who knows some more people and see. So next piece of advice is to ask them about non-work things. I will say be careful with this one. So I'm not saying you have to like spill out your whole life. Obviously it depends how close you are as a friend with this coworker. You don't want to just charge into intense subjects and you gotta test the waters and see like, you know, what are they okay talking about or not, especially at your work. What has your work set any rules, like what you're allowed to talk about? So be careful with this one. But for me, it's felt really freeing and really connecting that I feel safe talking to my coworkers about, you know, anything that I could need or want, because it's like we're people too. We have lives outside of work and things outside of work affect us here. So you might want to talk about them. So for example, I've asked coworkers for like, you know, hey, I need a little relationship advice, or I'm thinking about moving, what do you think? Or like, how did you decide how to move and where to move? So just asking people things like that, again, it just builds more rapport. You're building that relationship. You're not just talking about work all the time. It's like, okay, this person actually has things, struggles they're trying to figure out, and I can hopefully impart some advice. And even with like even more intense things like during COVID, you know, we've all been asking each other, how you doing, how you holding up? Like we've been trying to talk about mental health days, like what have we found that's been helpful, where are we really struggling? And when Stop Age and Hate was really at its peak, it felt really kind to have my boss say like, hey, are you okay? I know this thing is going on, you can talk to me. And so I told them like, hey, I'm honestly really like not in it right now. I can't do my best work right now. Like what can we do? Maybe lighten the load a little or figure out like how I can get through this. But really just the act of talking to him like really helps. Like have someone at work like I talk to about this that understands that like I'm not just a work. Like there are things outside that affect me. So just like talking about things that aren't work are really awesome and helpful for me in connecting and making relationships with people. And then kind of similar to that note is to add them on social media. And again, this one I'll say be careful with, because if you don't want your coworkers looking at anything you're doing on social, then you probably shouldn't add them. If you do add them, like sometimes it can be a cool way to connect. You get to figure out like, you know, what do they do outside of work? Do they like hiking? Do they like biking? Do they like making funny content? You know, what's their family like? So it's cool to kind of see life outside of work. And then on that note, you can like comment, respond, like stuff. I've had a lot of coworkers that like go LOL, like that's so funny. So they like laugh at my content and that like brings us closer. Or maybe they'll see something I posted recently about like what I've learned in therapy and they're like, wow, like that's really awesome, thanks for sharing. So it's like just kind of that little awesome, I'm letting you know that I like your content and we're kind of connected in this way as well, not just over like work stuff. So I think in that way it can be cool. I found it cool to add my coworkers on socials. I think it just brings us a little bit closer as friends, but again, you just have to be careful with that one. So the last tip I'll give is consistency. As with any type of relationship, you have to consistently like talk to each other at some point to feel like it's a friendship. Like if you talk once, like at the welcome, and then you never talk again, like it's fine. I don't know if you consider them like friends because you don't really reach out to them for anything, but you know them. But like scheduling something like kind of regularly so you can get to know them and build that relationship is how you make a friendship. So for example, one of my coworkers who I became pretty close with as friends, we scheduled to watch this TV show Kung Fu together. So every Wednesday night we would get on Zoom and we watch it together. So after the show ended, I was like, I realized I hadn't talked to him for a minute because I'm like, oh, we haven't had like a one-on-one for a while. Like we've been in group meetings, but I like one-on-one times cool too. So I just messaged him, was hey, like we haven't chatted for like a couple weeks, like I'm gonna throw something on your calendar so we can talk again. I can catch up and see like what's happening. So I did that, and then we were able to catch up, and it feels really good. And I feel like if you like really like someone, you know, maybe you can schedule a meeting every week for like 15 minutes just to talk to them, like see how they're doing, what's happening, what's going on. So it's totally normal, because I feel like in the actual workplace setting, you know, you would like go work next to the person that you were friends with, or like chat with them sometimes like throughout the day, but now you can't really do that, so you have to do it via Slack. So just like regularly message someone. I don't think you need to message someone like every day or like every week even, but just like every once in a while check in on them if you're like interested in actually like becoming friends with them, and also scheduling regular follow-up. So I know like recently someone just started working with me and I reached out to them, did the 15-minute call, and I was really interested in what they had to say, and I'm like, oh, I really want to be this person's friend. Like they seem pretty cool. So I just texted them after on Slack. I was just like, hey, like I really want to learn more about the space-time continuum. I'm gonna put a meeting on our calendar in 2 weeks. And he was like, yeah, that's awesome. So I did that. And so again, it's like that regular consistency of, yes, I'm gonna see this person and talk to them. And this tip is very key if you want to build like those long-standing friendships where you feel like you actually have a friendship, or like if you left to work, you would still be friends with them and talk to them and hang out with them. Those are all the tips for how to make friends at work when you're working remotely. I hope that you found this helpful. If you have any tips of your own, please feel free to leave a comment below. Definitely hit that sub button, as we'll be giving out more advice in future videos, and like this video if it was helpful. I wish you all good luck in making friends at work. Remember, you don't have to have friends at work, but it feels really fulfilling for me to have friends at work that I can get excited about and like go to work and be like, yes, I'm so excited to hang out with these people. I'm really pumped that I get to work with awesome people that I actually like and get to talk to about life. For me, that was really important, which is why I work really hard to cultivate these relationships and friendships at work. So hopefully these can help you cultivate relationships as well. So that's all for today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.